My fiance's family has been secretly charging me rent to visit their lake house for 2 years. When I found out the house was actually mine all along, I evicted them during their anniversary party. Asterisk. I'm writing this from what I just learned is my lake house in Wisconsin, watching my ex-fiance's family pack their cars in the rain. I still can't believe how deep this goes. Original post. I, 28F, have been with Jake, 30M, for 3 years, engaged for 8 months. His family owns this beautiful lake house in Lake Geneva that we visit most weekends during summer. It's been our main bonding experience. His parents, Tom and Linda, his sister Michelle, her husband, their kids, big family cookouts, boat rides, the whole Norman Rockwell thing. Here's what I thought was happening. Jake's parents bought this place in the 90s as their retirement dream. They're generous but practical people. When Jake and I started getting serious, they began asking me to chip in for expenses when we stayed there. Made total sense. Groceries, utilities, boat gas, maintenance. Started at $100 per weekend, gradually increased to $300 as we visited more often. I never questioned it. These people were going to be my in-laws. The house is gorgeous, right on the water, probably worth $800,000. I felt grateful they included me and happy to contribute. Over 2 years, I've paid them roughly $15,000 in expenses. Last month, Jake's parents started talking about selling the house. Said they were getting older, maintenance was becoming too much, they wanted to downsize. They asked if Jake and I might be interested in buying it from them for $750,000. We started seriously discussing it, getting pre-approved for mortgages, the whole thing. That's when I decided to do some research on the property value and history, due diligence before the biggest purchase of our lives. I went to the county assessor's website to look up the property records. What I found made me physically sick. The house isn't owned by Tom and Linda. It's owned by me. Has been since 2019. According to the records, the property was transferred to me via quitclaim deed from my late grandmother's estate. My grandmother, who died in 2019, who I knew had some property in Wisconsin, but never knew the details because my parents handled everything. I called my parents immediately. My mom went quiet when I asked about Grandma's Wisconsin property. Then she explained, Grandma left me her lake house in her will. My parents had been managing the estate and paying property taxes from a trust account. They'd been trying to figure out how to tell me about it because they knew I was getting serious with Jake and didn't want to complicate things. My parents had been paying nearly $12,000 annually in property taxes and maintenance for a house I didn't even know I owned, a house where my fiance's family had been charging me rent to stay in. I sat in my car outside the county office and called Jake. Asked him point blank if he knew his parents didn't own the lake house. He got defensive immediately, asking why I was investigating his family. When I told him what I discovered, he went silent for a long time. Finally, he said, Look, my parents have been taking care of that place for years. They deserve compensation. I asked him how long he'd known. He admitted his parents told him last year when we started talking about marriage. They'd figured out I was the actual owner when they saw my last name on some tax documents. Instead of telling me, they decided to keep collecting rent and see how long they could make it work. The plan was to eventually sell me my own house and pocket the money. I hung up and drove straight to the lake house, used the key I'd been given to my own house, and went inside. Started looking through drawers and closets I'd never felt comfortable exploring before. Found a whole filing cabinet of documents in the basement, property tax bills with my name on them, insurance policies listing me as owner, maintenance receipts going back to 2019, and a folder labeled Jenny's house with calculations of all the money they'd collected from me, plus plans for the fake sale. They'd been keeping meticulous records of their fraud. Jake's family was supposed to arrive that evening for Tom and Linda's 35th wedding anniversary celebration. I decided to wait. When they pulled up with cars full of food and decorations, I was sitting on the deck with all the documents spread out on the table. The look on Linda's face when she saw me was pure terror. Tom tried to bluster through it, saying we could work something out and that they'd earned the money through upkeep. I told them they had 24 hours to remove all their belongings and return any keys. Michelle started crying, saying I was ruining their family tradition and breaking up Jake's parents' marriage. Jake tried to mediate, suggesting we could share the house. I said, you can't share something with someone who already owns it entirely. Called my parents and a lawyer that night. Lawyer said this is clear-cut fraud and I could pursue criminal charges if I wanted. My parents drove up from Milwaukee the next morning with boxes of documents I'd never seen. The original will, estate papers, everything. Jake has been calling non-stop, alternating between apologies and anger. His last message said I was destroying his family over money and that he thought I was better than this. I'm supposed to marry into this family in 6 months. How do you come back from finding out your fiancé and his entire family have been systematically defrauding you while you paid to stay in your own house? Update 1, 4 days later. The last few days have been insane. Thank you to everyone who confirmed I'm not overreacting. I was starting to second-guess myself. Jake's family cleared out yesterday. It was awkward and tense. Tom kept muttering about ungrateful kids and how they'd invested so much work in the property. Linda tried to hug me goodbye and whispered that she hoped I'd reconsider for Jake's sake. Michelle was the worst. She actually said I should be grateful they'd maintained the house so well and that I was lucky they hadn't let it fall apart. She also mentioned that her kids considered this their grandparents' house and I was traumatizing them by taking it away. I found more evidence while cleaning out their belongings. Tom had been using my house address for some of his business correspondence. Linda had been telling her book club she owned a lake house and hosting meetings here. They'd been living a complete lie. Jay came by alone on Sunday. He looked terrible, hadn't shaved, wearing the same clothes from 2 days ago. He begged me to reconsider pressing charges against his parents, said his dad might lose his job if this becomes public. He works in banking. Apparently, fraud charges would be career-ending. When I asked why he didn't tell me the truth when he found out, he said he was protecting his family and didn't want to hurt his parents who'd worked so hard on the house. I asked him what he thought would happen when we got married and combined finances. How exactly was he planning to explain me buying my own house from his parents? He admitted they'd hoped to drag out the sale process long enough that I'd never dig too deep into the paperwork. They figured once we were married, I'd be less likely to make a big deal about it. The audacity is breathtaking. I told Jake the engagement was off. He broke down crying, saying I was choosing a house over our love and that his family would be destroyed. I reminded him that his family chose fraud over honesty and that I was choosing self-respect over being married to someone who could lie to my face for over a year. My parents have been incredible. They apologized repeatedly for not telling me about the inheritance sooner. My dad explained that Grandma had specifically requested they not tell me about the house until I was settled in life because she didn't want it to influence my relationships. The irony is painful. I've been staying at the lake house this week, and it's surreal. Looking through Grandma's things that I never knew were here, photo albums, her books, even some of her clothes still in the master bedroom closet. She clearly loved this place. Found a letter she wrote to me, sealed and labeled for Jenny and when she inherits the house. My parents said they were waiting for the right time to give it to me. In it, she talks about hoping I'll make happy memories here and find someone who loves me for who I am, not what I have. Jake's been texting constantly. His messages have evolved from apologies to anger to bargaining. Yesterday, he suggested we could start fresh and that his family would pay me back over time. He actually calculated that. If they paid me $500 monthly, they could repay the rent money in about 3 years. I didn't respond. His sister Michelle called me from a blocked number, screaming that I'm a vindictive bitch who's destroying innocent children because her kids won't get to use the lake house anymore. She said I should be ashamed of myself for stealing their family memories. I hung up and blocked the number, meeting with my lawyer again tomorrow to discuss next steps. Part of me wants to just move on and let them live with the shame. Another part of me is furious that they were so calculating and manipulative. Update 2 weeks later, the lawyer meeting was enlightening. She said this isn't just about the money I paid them. They've been essentially committing tax fraud by claiming expenses for a property they don't own, plus the attempted sale fraud. She recommended I at least file a civil suit to recover damages and establish a legal record, even if I don't pursue criminal charges. I decided to file the civil suit, not out of revenge, but because they need to understand there are consequences for this level of deception. Jake's parents hired their own lawyer, who reached out about settling. They offered to pay back the $15,000 in rent plus interest. My lawyer laughed and explained that damages include the property taxes they should have been paying, maintenance costs they should have covered, and the emotional distress of planning to buy my own house from them. We're seeking $45,000 total. Their lawyer called it excessive. My lawyer replied that fraud tends to be expensive. The family dynamics have completely imploded. Jake's aunt, Tom's sister, reached out to me on Facebook. She said she always wondered how Tom and Linda could afford such a nice lake house on his salary. She apologized for the family's behavior and said she's not surprised because Tom has always been shady with money. She also told me that Jake's parents have been bragging to extended family about their investment property and how smart they were to buy lakefront before prices went up. They've been taking credit for my grandmother's good judgment for years. Jake made one last attempt at reconciliation. He showed up at my apartment in Madison with flowers and a ring, not the engagement ring, a different one. Said he'd been thinking about everything and realized he wanted to start over completely honest. I asked him what he meant by honest. He said he'd tell me everything going forward. I said, "What about everything you've already hidden from me?" Long pause. Then he admitted there was other stuff, but it wasn't as big as the house thing. Other stuff. I told him to leave and that we were done completely. Later that night, I got a message from a woman named Ashley. She said she'd been following the drama through mutual friends and thought I should know that Jake had been messaging her on Instagram for months, including during our engagement. Nothing physical, but definitely emotional cheating. She sent screenshots. The messages weren't explicitly romantic, but they were intimate in a way that crossed lines. Lots of "you understand me" and "I wish I could talk to you about this" and complaints about me being stressed about wedding planning. I forwarded everything to my lawyer. She said it supports the pattern of deception and dishonesty. I've been spending more time at the lake house, fixing it up and making it truly mine. It's therapeutic. I found my grandmother's recipe box and have been cooking her old recipes. The neighbors have been wonderful. They remember her and are happy to see the house being used again. One neighbor, an older man named Frank, told me he always wondered about the renters who claimed to own the place. He said my grandmother talked about me all the time and would be proud of how I handled this situation. The wedding venue has been canceled. Lost the deposit, but honestly, it's a small price to pay for dodging this bullet. Final update: 1 month later, the civil case settled out of court. Jake's family agreed to pay $40,000 in damages plus all my legal fees. Their lawyer advised them that going to trial would likely result in higher damages and possible criminal referrals. Tom and Linda had to take out a loan against their actual house to pay the settlement. Jake's sister Michelle sent me a nasty email about how I'm destroying their retirement and breaking up the family. I didn't respond. Jake made one final attempt to contact me through a mutual friend. He wanted me to know he's learned from this and would do anything to make it right. The mutual friend said Jake seemed genuinely remorseful, but also kept talking about how his family didn't mean any harm. I told the friend that intent doesn't matter when the impact is fraud. I fully moved into the lake house for the summer, working remotely and loving the peace. I've been learning about my grandmother through her belongings and the stories neighbors tell. She was apparently quite the character, hosted big 4th of July parties, and let local kids use her dock for swimming. I'm planning to continue that tradition. The house feels like home in a way my apartment never did. I understand now why Grandma wanted me to have it when I was settled in life. Not financially settled, but emotionally ready to appreciate what she was giving me. I've been dating casually. Met a guy named David at the farmer's market in town. He's a teacher, divorced, has a teenage daughter. When I told him the story of how I discovered I owned the house, his response was, "Well, that's one way to find out your boyfriend's family are con artists." His honesty and humor are refreshing after years of Jake's manipulation. Jake's parents apparently told their church that I stole their house and destroyed their son's happiness. Several church members reached out to my parents to get the real story. Word travels fast in small communities. The irony is that if Jake's family had just been honest from the beginning, we probably could have worked out a fair arrangement. I would have been happy to let them continue using the house in exchange for maintenance or worked out some kind of shared custody situation. Their greed and deception destroyed any possibility of a relationship. To anyone reading this who's planning to marry into a family, pay attention to how they handle money and honesty in small situations. If they'll lie about little things, they'll lie about big things too. And always, always know what you own. Check your inheritance paperwork. Understand your assets. Don't let anyone convince you that ignorance is bliss. I'm keeping the lake house. Every weekend here feels like a gift from my grandmother and a reminder that I deserve honesty and respect. Jake's family can find their own lake house to buy with their own money this time. The 4th of July party is going to be epic. All the neighbors are invited, and I'm making Grandma's famous potato salad. Some traditions are worth continuing, others are worth ending. Thanks for following this wild ride, Reddit. Sometimes the best revenge is just living well in your own house.